Thank you, Sally. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. This morning, I will be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. I'm joined on the panel by Robert Upton and Richard Whitbread. Representing the Assessment Department, City of Winnipeg, is Matthew Barocas, and our administrative assistant is Sally Caulfield. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the hearing. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if their matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with this Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questioning again. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence of an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions based on the evidence presented here today. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. And can everybody please make sure their phones are turned off? Today, we will be hearing items 1 through 5 on our docket today. Ms. Caulfield, please affirm the assessor to start.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Matthew Barocas.
You affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. To start the hearing today, we do have a preliminary issue to deal with. It's our understanding that that the briefs submitted by the assessor were labeled as late submission. We'll deal with that first before we start the individual properties on the docket. Excuse me. Somebody's really loud in the background here. I don't know. Do you hear that? Or is...
Not here.
Yeah, I hear a humming noise too.
Okay.
Well, this has to be on, or they can't hear us.
I think it might be Matthew.
Yeah, I tried to adjust these old speakers because they're way too loud. Maybe if I turn them back up, the humming will go away. Just let me know.
Okay.
That's better. Yep.
Does that help any?
No. Maybe a little bit better, I think.
A little bit better? Okay, let me try again. How about that?
No, there's still a squealing sound.
Here.
That's better.
Right there?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll leave it there then.
kind of. Okay. Thanks, Matthew.
No problem.
Okay, so Matthew, we've got it. It's noted on the briefs that you submitted that they were submitted late. Do you have any comments regarding this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I was I was out of town. I didn't get back to work until September. What was it? The 8th. I was actually out of the country altogether. I was away for 3 weeks, so I got back and I'm like, oh, there's a board revision right away. So,
Can't hear you.
oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's a bit better, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was out of the country for 3 weeks, and I got back on the 8th, and then I saw I had board revision, so I submitted the evidence. Then it was still well ahead of the time, and I didn't get the applicant's evidence until after I submitted mine. So it's not like there was any sort of advantage gained or anything in that respect, nor was there any additional prep time I had as opposed to the applicant. So that would be my explanation for it.
Okay. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Robert, any questions of the assessor?
How late were they? How
I
late
think
was it?
you'd have to ask the panel. I probably submitted them, if I recall, on the Friday, which would have been, looking at the calendar here, September the 8th. But I wasn't back to work until that day, and when I got back, I submitted them just from memory. But you'd have to ask the clerk for confirmation in regards to the submission date.
Okay.
Are we talking hours or days? A couple of days or hours or?
Well, you'd have to ask the clerk, but I'm pretty sure, I think from what I recall, I submitted them on the 8th.
Okay. We shall confirm with the with Sally in camera. Sally, can you recess and ask everybody to leave the room, and we'll discuss this issue in camera.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sally. I will, excuse me. I will now call the meeting back to order. Regarding the late submission by the assessor, the panel has considered the explanation given by the assessor, and it is our opinion will allow the submission of his briefs for this hearing today. We'll proceed with item number 1, file number 23-192. Address is 62 Evanston Street. It's a realty assessment appeal for 2024. Sally, can you please swear in the applicant?
Please stand. State your full name.
Sharon Pajak.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good morning to the applicant. Thank you for your patience. Matthew, when you're ready, please, 62 Evanston Street.
Okay.
For a matter of non-cooperation here, Bob?
Yes.
Non-cooperation?
Okay. We will deal with the preliminary issue of request for non-cooperation by the assessor. Mr. Baracus, when you're ready, please.
All right. File number 23-192, roll number 1208215900, 62 Evanston Street. In regards to the recommendation for the burden of proof to be switched to the applicant based on the Municipal Assessment Act. If you go to the second page of my brief, you can see that we haven't had mailer history for quite a few years, and most notably the most recent year as it applies to our reference date here today. So you go to page, pardon me, first page numbers, page 8. This is the Canada Post record of the registered mail, which is the second mailing of the mailer we send out. This is history of the delivery, so you can see on June 10th it was delivered. And the next page, there's the scan delivery date. There was no signature available in our system on this piece of paper, but again, this is the second mailing. We send out the mailer on a mass basis. Everyone gets it, and those who don't reply by a certain date get the second mailing. So as such, based on the Municipal Assessment Act, I have to ask for the burden of proof to be placed on the applicants.
Okay, thank you for that. Does the applicant have an understanding of what the assessor is requesting and the reason for it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, any response to the evidence presented by the assessor that that you didn't respond to requests for income and expense statement?
Yes. This was a building that was burned in a fire in 1999 and was owner occupied until January of 2021. So I acknowledge that income and expense statements were not provided. However, it is because the city and I were not able to agree on a fair market rent for the owner occupied suite. And I have appeared before this board before over a decade ago to appeal the numbers they were using. And then I was asked by the board not to come back for a few years. And I did not submit income and expense statements because I was not prepared to continue this confrontational relationship with the city, arguing over how much I should use as rent for the owner occupied suite, which was half of the building. So I was kind of in a tough spot.
Okay. Robert, any questions for either party?
None for me, thank you. No.
Thank you. Richard?
Yes. Matthew, where was this, or these two notices sent, or the documents sent? I see nothing in your evidence that tells us an address.
They would have been sent to the address for the property that we have in our system that I don't have access to. The same address in which the assessment mailer, or rather the assessment notice was sent, which she would have got to be able to appeal and appear today.
Do you know what address is in the system?
I don't have that information on this system right here.
See, there's a piece missing here in my mind, Matthew. Typically, when we see these appeals, we see a letter from the department, and it has a date, it has an address, it has an addressee, and it's usually about June 19th or something like that of the year. I don't see that letter attached in your evidence, right?
Yeah, again, this is what I had scanned for this particular property into our system. To my knowledge, there was no change of address, so the address would be the same as the assessment notice that she would seemingly receive just fine to appeal. But you are correct, I don't have an address in particular, but you notice on page 8 that does say that this is delivered under oath. I'm telling you, this came from our property identification number for this property. So it's not like I've taken this from another property and pasted it in and I'm trying to pass it off as hers.
I'm not following that last piece where,
I'm not saying, basically what I'm not saying is I didn't take page 8 and 9 from another property in our system and then put it in my evidence and try and pass it off as the registered tracking that was shown based on our record keeping coming from her property.
I would never imply that, Matthew. What I'm struggling with is this panel doesn't have anything to indicate where you sent this or to who you sent this to, which we typically get. And of course, there's no signature on anything that we have available. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, but I think the applicant just acknowledged that they didn't send in the mailer or return it. So I'd probably weigh that comment.
I hear you. That'll be my next question for the applicant. So, Ms. Applicant, did you indicate that you received the mailer?
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I will state that I have received several mailers. I may not have received sorry, I'm just looking for the list. I may not have received 2020, but I have received prior years mailers and not filled out the information. I acknowledge that.
Right. And the address you use, is it the property address or do you have a different address? Like
Up until April of 2021, the property address, and then I had moved and I think it is now changed to my new address when on Kingston Road.
okay, you believe that you have changed your address with the city?
In 2021, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Richard. Robert, did I ask you if you had any questions?
Yes, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to the applicant, please. Just to clarify, from my fellow panel member, so you remember receiving the income and expense statement? The relevant one that we're talking about? We're not going to talk about the past at all.
Which one is the relevant one?
Matthew, 2020, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember receiving that 2020 request?
No, I do not for 2020. We had
So that would have been sent to you in 2021, right? So back, giving you an opportunity to look backwards a year.
I do not remember receiving 2020 mailer.
Okay.
And at that time, we were having trouble. The tenant had reported that her mail was being stolen out of the boxes in 2020, but 2021 I have received and I submitted online.
For 2021, yeah, okay. Okay. So you received one in 2021. That would be reflective of 2020 information. Is that what you're saying?
Me?
Yes. Yeah. To the applicant. Yes.
I'm sorry. Whichever one was sent out in this current fiscal year, I submitted that one.
Okay. So you received one in 2023 that you're referring to now. So that's post-reference for us. Okay. Okay. We'll leave it at that. Now, would that have been submitted or probably received at the 62 Evanston address? Were you still living there?
I moved in January of 2021.
Okay. You moved out of there or into there? Sorry.
Out of 62
Out.
Edison.
Okay, so you moved out. Okay.
I would like to state, I have received prior year's statements and did not submit them for the reason I indicated.
Yeah. No, that's okay. You know, we're not interested in prior years. We're not going to hold that against you. We're just dealing with the Matthew, would you mind explaining what year we're dealing when it would have been mailed out and when it was relevant to the relevant INE that we're speaking about?
Well, the registered mail went out June 10th, 2021. We're looking at the 2020 January 1st to December 30th.
Yeah. Okay.
Expense period.
Okay, so that's the income and expense statement that we're dealing with. It would have been received by you or the assessor showing that it was sent out on June of 2021, and the request was for information from from the year 2020.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's what we're referring to. If you have any knowledge of where that income and expense statement was received and how it was responded to?
I have no knowledge. I cannot say for sure whether or not I received that request for information.
Okay. Okay.
2021, sorry.
All right. No, fair enough. Thank you. And in relation to this, that building was repaired during this time frame. It wasn't burnt out. You referred to a fire.
It was operational.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Matthew, you have any questions regarding this? Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody else? We've all asked questions here. Sally, we're going to recess and consider the request for non-cooperation by the assessor, please.
All right, I'll be right back.
Thank you, Sally. I will now call the hearing back to order. The panel has analyzed all evidence presented by the assessor and the applicant regarding the request for non-cooperation, and it is our opinion that the request for non-cooperation not be granted. So, Mr. Baracus, the floor is yours. You will start first.
Okay. So the roll year we're looking at here is 2024, so that's an April 1st, 2021 reference date. Assessed value of 678,000. It is it was originally built in 1916. It's got an effective year built of 1975 on it. 3 suites, 3 outdoor parking spots. So we don't have any history. You can see on page 2. So with the model on this one, we haven't had mailers for a while, so our information is our model is only really as good as the information we receive. So one bedroom, 1 2-bedroom, 1 3-bedroom, 3 total units. Average monthly rent we have is $1,854.20. Using the model parameters here with a 44.88 expense ratio and a 5.25 cap generates estimated market value of 678,000. Comparables are on page 4. So you can see, especially comparables 2, 3, and 4. They are newer. Notice they were built fairly recently, 2015 and 2020. These smaller rental buildings between 6 and 7 units here. They're all 2 bedrooms. Ours is a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. If you look at the gross floor per area, gross floor area per unit, our subject property has the highest aside from comparable number 1 on Wellington, which is 73 2-bedrooms. So the average monthly rent of all the comparables range from 1,707 to 2,250. We're at 1,854. So that's where the model got I would imagine some of this data from looking at the comparables, rents from buildings that did submit their income and expense mailer. A cap rate chart is found on page 5. And then our cap rate evidence, not site specific comparables, just examples of cap rate sales that have occurred in the relevant time frame. Basically, I looked at these properties, I took the income and expense mailers, and I stabilized the net operating income. Using that and a known sale price, I was able to generate calculated cap rates upon the sale. So you can see they range from 3.6 on the really low end for same areas up to 5.74. There's a building on McPhillips is the newest, and I'm not saying it's physically similar because it's in the suburbs and it's a larger building, but it's at 4.79. We're at 5.25. Better Municipal Act excerpts here on page 7, and then we have on 8 and 9, which we've already reviewed and discussed, registered mailing of the mailer. Then on page 10, and I was trying to dig around, you can see there's rent here for a 3-bedroom unit. It says it expired on 20th of January 2021, so that is prior to the reference dates. We've got rent advertised at $19.25. So if you look at the pictures, you see the outside of the building here, and then moving to the inside, you can see that it's definitely not 1916 anymore. So they've done quite a bit of work. I have not inspected the property, so I can't say for sure. I apologize for the blurriness of the pictures. I had to, because the ad was expired, I had to use those really small pictures from the initial Google search, because when I clicked on the link, they weren't there. So again, we only know as much as the information that we're provided, and the information I was able to dig up from the internet was an expired ad that said they were renting a 3-bedroom for $19.25. We're at 1854 20 on the model. So without any more information, I wasn't able to make a change. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Does the applicant have any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Yes, I do. Can I just ask a technical question?
Of course.
So I haven't done a lot of Zoom calls. Is there quite a delay when I start to speak and then you guys can hear me?
No,
Okay.
not for me. No.
Okay, so questions for the assessor on page 10 of your presentation. You found the ad that we used to rent the suite for the first time, and it says, can you tell me how many bedrooms it says it has on it?
It says 3 bedrooms.
Where does it say that? I see it says a large study and 2 bedrooms.
It says, if you look side for rent, 1925, it says 3 bedrooms right beside there.
Okay, can I make a comment or just questions?
No, that's okay. Make a comment, please.
When you put in 2 bedrooms and a study on the app, it just goes up to 3. So that 3 bed is like some kind of fixed number. So that suite, which is on the top second and third floor, has 2 bedrooms and a study.
Okay, noted.
Okay, so in terms of other questions that I have, you indicate an effective gross income of 64,615, and is that model very different if the effective income is actually only 46,000? Do you use a similar model?
Like, okay, so if the gross potential rent was in the 40,000 range, then the vacancy rate would apply to that. It'd be less vacancy than your effective gross income wouldn't be lower.
Okay, and then what about the expense rate? How would that change?
Well, the expense rate wouldn't change, but the number that the expense rate is applied to would be lower, so then there would be less expenses applied to the property.
Okay, and how do you treat capital expenses if we incurred 20 or 30,000 of capital expenses in 2021 and 2020, 21, 22 in that time frame? How are those treated on your model?
They're not included for analysis. If you submitted your mailer, we wouldn't use those as part of the total expenses we would include, because capital expenses, if you look at it, like appraisal theory, they're not included in the overall calculation of the value.
Okay, so I'm calling them capital items, but actually what I mean is if we have to refurbish our floors and they cost $5,000, how is that treated in your model?
Well, I mean, if you're redoing all the floors, it would be, I would say it's capital. If you were just repairing a portion of it, then it would be repair and maintenance.
So different from how income tax.
It's kind of like a subjective
Okay.
decision.
Okay, on page 4 of your submission on the rent comparables, you have a gross floor area per unit of 1,587 square feet.
Mhm.
And how is that calculated?
Just the overall square footage of the building divided by the number of units.
So 4,800 and 4,800 divided by 3? Roughly?
It would be 4760, so the gross floor, and then it says gross floor area by units, so we have 3 units, so.
And then how do you account for utility space and furnaces and
Again, yeah,
laundry area?
that's definitely a question that we hear probably like every single property. That's not something that we have the information of. We don't ask for, okay, give us the square footage of every common area so we can build that out. You can see in the other rent comparables that they also have that gross figure. So the gross floor area per unit is not the net average area per unit. It's just simply a reflection of building square footage divided by the amount of units.
Okay, so if I have 500 square feet of unusable space in my basement and as part of that 4,800, and you're dividing by 3 suites and then basing your rent calculation on that, that's not going to be it's not very comparable to numbers that have 6, 7, and 73 suites. Like that's going to be very different.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that I don't really put weight on. It's just a rough metric, so I'm not trying to say your units are bigger than the comparables. I don't have that information. All I know is the gross floor area per unit, because these other buildings, they do have common areas as well, so it's just a very rough indicator.
Okay, and then how do you get your average monthly rent per unit then, if it's not based on the square footage?
Well, it's, first of all, the model uses age, area, and size. And also it looks at we get the mailers from people who submit them, and then they go into the model, and then the model assigns a rent to your property, average monthly rent, based on the data it gets for similarly aged units in similar level of renovation. That's how it works.
Okay, so the effective year of our building is 1975. Were you not able to find any other buildings 1975 to compare it to?
I mean, when I look inside your building on pictures, starting on page 12, I mean, I wasn't around in 75. It doesn't look like 75 to me.
It's 1999.
So what it is the 1975 is also indicative of the fact that there's some elements of the building that are original, like the foundation, probably some framing, some elements that have not been replaced. So it's kind of like a balancing act. If you renovate it in 99, it's not like a brand new 99, it's not the same, because there's some elements that are older. So the person who made the adjustment felt that, more of a middle ground in 1975 was more reflective.
Sorry, I don't understand how that, what you're
So,
saying.
okay, so did you replace the foundation of your property? when it
No.
burned? Okay, so if you have a 1999 building that's completely brand new and you had your renovated 1916 building, 1999 in our system has, the brand new building's gonna have all new foundation, all new framing, all new electrical, all new absolutely everything. Your building doesn't have that because you just renovated an older building. Therefore, if we put them both in the system, would it not make sense, if we put them both at 1999, they're gonna be given the same value. However, all else the same, the building that's brand new with a new foundation is gonna have a lower expense ratio. It's gonna sell more than the renovated old building on the old foundation. So in order to capture that, we don't set the effective year built at 1999.
I understand that, and so my question is still, could you not find any other comparable buildings closer to 1975 to compare me to compare our building to, because you're comparing me to buildings that you just explained would not be appropriate because we should use a lower comparable to 1999.
Okay, my comment to the applicant would be, this is the information, these are the comparables that the assessors presented.
Okay.
And he's required to defend, okay?
Thank you. Okay, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Robert, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, on your comparables, the ones on Grosvenor Avenue, would they be a superior location? In the Evanston Street?
I don't think so,
You don't think it would be,
no.
even though they're on Grosvenor, okay. And is heat included in the present rental? Oh, would you,
That's something, let me check the mailer, not the mailer, you get the mailer. You'd probably have to ask the applicant, they'd have better understanding.
well, when you arrive at an average monthly rent, do you include the heat in that?
That's assigned by the model. That's not something that I have handled.
There's a model, okay, strictly model. On your cap rate, you consider this a low rise A or low rise B?
When you look at the. Let me see here, okay, on page 5, you can see that the ranges are the same. There really isn't any different in the rates. That's
Well,
something that looks like CBRE.
Yeah, there's a difference there, yeah.
Yeah, Colliers doesn't do it, Cushman Wakefield, and I don't do it. I don't think I don't like that metric, so I don't really consider that my valuation.
Okay, how did you arrive at the 525 cap rate?
The 525 was assigned by the model.
By the model. Which is lower than the percentile.
Well, it's 525, so if we go to our chart here, it's 4.8 to 5.6, so we're kind of in the middle of the distribution.
Okay, it's just a model number that's shown here. Yeah, I don't think I have any more questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
On the cap rate, again, on the cap rate, the cap rate evidence you've given on the buildings that sold. You said McPhelps was the most.
Well, in terms of year built, but if you look at 700 St. Mary's and 203 Bertrand, those are only 9 suites. And they have 3.6, there's a 3.6 cap and there's a 4.77 cap. If you look at their overall sale prices at 900,000, 1 million, the sale price is lower. So thinking that you can see the cap rate's lower because when the sale price is lower, there's a bigger pool of potential investors because it's not limited to just the big guys who can cough up, 5 million, 10 million, etc. So with more demand, it causes the sale price to go up over static, known stabilized NOI, the cap rate's gonna go down. So you kind of, I would say the first three are something that I would consider.
Yeah, I mean, Phillips is much larger in terms of,
The only thing that's similar about that would be I'd say the condition, because it's newer and this building's been extensively renovated as far as I can tell with the pictures.
so we rely more on number 2 and 3.
I would look at the grouping of the first three, but in terms of the size, I mean, this has got what, 3 units, it's at, 678, it's definitely more a reachable price point for, non-institutional investors to throw their hat in the ring on a purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
Yes. Did you visit the property?
I did not.
Okay, so you can't comment on structure, roof, HVAC, any of that, yeah?
That's correct.
And you don't know what brought it from 1916 to 1975?
No, I don't have my notes with me here in the room, but I mean, looking at the pictures, you can see that it's been extensively renovated. The applicant could probably comment more in regards to the extent of the work that was done.
Yeah, I don't see any permits in your.
Yeah, I mean, they probably removed some walls too, so it looks like they did some big time renos.
Yeah, it's the hidden things that I worry about in terms of electrical, plumbing, roofing, that sort of thing. Often that's where the big money is spent. Looking at your comparables, number one, is that kind of an outlier on here, Matthew, or have you got it in there for a specific reason?
Well, I put it in there because you can see that the effective year built is 1975. So we're at 75, that one's at 75. But again, it's 15 stories. This isn't 15 stories. So, I mean, there's not a lot of these like little buildings that have been extensively renovated that have really high rents. So it's hard for me to, again, capture it on a rent comparable basis to try and make a determination whether our model is correct or not. So I put that in there as an example. However, that's not where I'm putting my weight, as I kind of steered my initial presentation towards. I was considering more 2, 3, and 4. And again, they're newer, but on, what does the tenant want to live in basis, when you look at the pictures that I was able to find online. The rent comparables range from 2015 to 2020. Look at the photographs. Does that look like 2015 or does that look like 1975 too? So we're trying to weigh both factors in making my determination of rent. And not for nothing, it says 1925 for, I guess, 3-bed, 2-bed. There you go.
Was this Wellington Crescent one an older building that was upgraded?
It actually doesn't have the year built, and because I don't have my system, I can't look it up for you.
Okay.
I anticipate the events of this morning.
Okay, and your cap rate coming in at this level 5.25, what are the predominant factors that would drive you to, or drive the model in your opinion? Because I know you didn't do it, I believe you didn't do it. What would be the predominant factors that would drive that 5.25?
The effective year built, the size of the building, definitely. Like I talked about earlier to Mr. Upton's question, and the area that the building is in.
The location, you mean?
Yeah.
And does the model factor in the original build year, 1916, in calculating or does it factor it in some way, or is it ignored completely and it goes straight to 1975?
It goes to 75, but then again, touching on the applicant's questions that's why we don't set it to 99, because we do. The judgment called made by the person at the time that the 1975 effective year built more efficiently captures some of the elements of the building that weren't updated. So, but it does go to effective year built in my understanding of the model.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Richard. Matthew, my first question, location of the subject property. I guess we're close to Wolseley, either between Wolseley and Palmerston or north of Wolseley. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just south of Wolseley.
Okay. So it's between Wolseley and Palmerston, is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, thank you. And the pictures you provided, would you know if they're indicative of the condition of all three units?
I mean, I haven't inspected the property, so I
Okay.
mean, I could probably answer better than I could.
Yeah, I'll ask the applicant then. Okay. And so the age variant was applied due to a fire in the building, and it looks like a lot of renovations done as a result of that fire damage.
Yeah, it's based on the renovated condition of the building.
Okay. And to achieve that age variant, an assessor would have visited the property. I'm not sure if you have this history, and established, in their opinion, it was a 1975 building. Is that correct?
I don't have the notes on inspection, but they would have for sure reviewed photographs, but I think there would have been a permit, and then in order to close the permit, they probably would have gone out and.
Okay. Okay. That is all my questions for you. The applicant, please bear with us while we get your brief up, and we will. Okay. Okay, when you are ready, please.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, before you start, I'm just going to make a comment to the applicant. From what you said, in your opinion, you never had good experiences appearing before the board. I'm just going to assure you that this is a new hearing. We have no knowledge of the history of what was said before in any other hearings. We're going to listen to both parties, and we're going to objectively make our decisions based on the evidence presented here today. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so I first of all want to acknowledge that acknowledge and apologize for the state of the submission that I put in online, the 54-pager. I had some technical difficulties, and I ended up having to send multiple emails, and then the way it's been presented is very poor, so I apologize for that, which is why I did a one-page summary to kind of help us, and I appreciate that you've allowed me to submit it. I said earlier that this building was burned in a fire in 1999. I think it's kind of a unique property. It used to be a 7-bachelor suite apartment, and I bought it in 1999 for $1 from Coin Holdings. It was burned. So there were extensive renovations done in 1999, at least $200,000. And so it was mostly gutted to the floor level and to the wall level. And in 1999, 24 years ago, was new wiring, new plumbing. And at that time, I bought it for myself. And the top two floors of the building, the third and fourth floor, were the owner occupied suite that I mentioned before. So if we look at the picture provided by the assessor, on page 10, I think, or 11, I mixed up on page 11, the basement there that you can sort of see is white or gray is a 1-bedroom suite in there. It's 550 square feet. The second floor that you can see sort of by the sign, the Evanson, that's a 2-bedroom suite. And then the top two floors are a 3rd-bedroom suite. And that suite is the one that I lived in for 20 something years. And it's 1,900 square feet. And those are the pictures that have been provided. So thank you to the assessor for saying it looks awesome. I did the renovations myself in 1999. So the building was a 7-suiter converted to a 3-suiter, and I appreciate for many years it's been difficult to figure out the value of the building because it was kind of my house and then kind of 2 rental suites. And so for the last 5 years, although I felt that the assessed value was way too high, I didn't really know what to do about it because of what I had mentioned before about difficulty with the prior city assessor more than a decade ago. Anyway, fast forward to 2021. Now the building is a rental building. And so I am charging the max amount of rent that I can charge that the market will bear. So for the basement suite, it's rented out at $900 a month. My sister-in-law is living in that suite right now. The 2-bedroom suite on the main floor is rented sadly to the original tenant from 1999. So because of rent control, her rent is $1,016 a month, and I can't do anything about it. Short of evicting her, which I'm not prepared to do. The top floor, at the time in 2021, we set it out to market. You saw the ad as presented by the assessor, $1,925 a month. Now it's $1,975. So as of today, 2023, the maximum amount of rent that we can charge for that building is $46,000 a year. So in 2021, the effective gross income was $42,597. So that's the maximum that we could rent it for at that time. We had expenses of $20,000, and on page 31 of the original submission, I enclosed a copy of the online submission that I had made comparing my numbers to the assessors.
What page number are you?
On page 31 of
31.
that 54 page cumbersome document. So my actual income after vacancy was $42,597. My actual expenses from the tax return were $20,176, which is 47% of income, higher than the assessors. And so the net income was $22,000. And at the time of my submission, which I also was under time constraints, I just used the 5.25% cap rate, although I am in disagreement with it. Anyway, the main issue as I presented on my summary page is this rent. So the city believes I should be able to get $64,615 in rent, but I cannot. That's not what the market will bear. And I think if we were in agreement on what the actual rent that I could charge would be, we would be closer to what I think the building is worth, which is in the $425,000 to $450,000 range. I provided in the 54-page document the current leases, which cover the time horizon from 2020 and 2021. So I have the Suite 1 leases in that time frame were $935, and then the new tenant was $900. And then Suite 2, the lease was $1,016. And Suite 3, there's 2 leases provided. The first tenant, $1,925, and then the second tenant, $1,975 for the larger suite. And I think I mentioned, or maybe I didn't, the basement suite is 550 square feet. The main floor is around 900 to 950, and then the third suite is around 1,800 to 1,850 square feet. And that's the one that we saw the pictures of. It's a beautiful suite, I agree. Due to technical difficulties, my actual file with all my bills were not forwarded. I saw when the 54-page document came back to me, but I have included my water bills in there, which are included in the rent. I have included my electrical and gas bills in there, which are in the rent, included in the rent. We pay the electrical and heat. So on page 26 of the submission is just a summary of my water bills. On page 54 of the submission is a summary of the hydro bills. On page 4 is the building insurance costs. And then what I did not submit is my extra repairs and maintenance that I incurred over 2020, 2021, 2022. My first tenant trashed the building in October of 2021 and moved to Turkey, now Turkey. And then the building was vacant for 3 months, December, January, February. I submitted a claim to RTB, and that information is on page 23, 24, 25. So he caused in excess of $7,000 of damage. So we had to go in and bring it back up to the value. And as I said, my general repair cost file was not provided, unfortunately, due to my technical troubles. Anyway, and I'm not sure how some of my costs that haven't been included were, would be included anyway, but I think if we can agree that I should only be assessed on the rent that I'm able to get in the market, and my percentage of expenses at 47% is only slightly above what the assessor would use, as he said in the model, regardless of the rent. I think we would get closer to the value. I think essentially this is kind of a hybrid building where I have one gorgeous suite that I can charge a lot of money for. And then the other 2 suites are affordable housing, because I have a long-term tenant from 1999 that's never going to move out. She's retired now. And then the basement suite is 550 square feet. And I've had at least 10 tenants in it because it's a starter apartment. And so that's about the most that I can get for it in the 9 to 935 range at current rents, at 2021 rents. I think that's probably all I can remember. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Does the assessor have any questions on the evidence presented by the applicant?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Richard, any questions of the applicant?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. Robert, any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I just want to be clear on this. You're saying the income should be about 46,000. You're talking about 2020, $46,000.
2023, 46,000.
2020 was
2020 would be around probably 45,000. Similar, because we had 0% rent increases for 2 years after that, so around 45,000.
what expenses were you asking us to consider?
The actual expenses of 20,176, or the assessor's 45%,
They're
or
close.
44.88. They're so close.
Okay, and the cap rate, you say you're agreeing on the cap rate?
No, I disagree with the cap rate. I think it's high. Not only is he comparing me to comparing our building to 2015, 2019 buildings, but also I think that the city will find over the next, well, I think the city will find that the cap rate is too high with the amount of interest rate changes that we've seen in the last year and a half. So I'm in disagreement. I think it should be lower. I think it should be closer to, the average of those first 3 buildings that he said, for 4.8, 3.6, 4.8, those buildings. I think it should be closer to the older buildings.
It should be 4.3 to 4.8, you're saying? So
Like closer to the 4.8 comparables that he's provided. Well, I don't think any of those buildings are very useful, as the assessor said, because they're all much bigger, but you can only go with the information that you have. I understand that.
So your request is for 426,000 value,
I used the cap rate as provided.
which is 400, comes to 426,000.
Correct.
Using your income and your expenses.
Correct.
And
And
you come up with a value of 426.
correct on it, and that's on the page 31 summary.
I don't see your pages numbered here. Am I missing?
Might be
I
on
was hoping that
far
you
right
could
side.
see it
The
digitally.
right side?
The far right side is a bar that shows the page number.
Okay.
I do apologize for not numbering them. I had to send it in 3 different emails and I didn't realize how it would look.
It was on the original submission, not on this. This is the
Okay, this is a one-page document.
that's the one page, yeah. So it's on the
It's on the other.
54 page.
Robert, I'm gonna ask the applicant, pardon me, to refer to the assessor's workup, and we're gonna go through and place her numbers in there, and maybe we'll get a clearer picture. Would that help?
Yeah, that'd be better. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
There, that is 6 of 54.
Oh, I see. We're gonna go back to the assessor. Yeah, I see what she's doing. I'm just getting at the final calculation here. How she arrived at 426. Okay, go ahead, Bob. What do you want to do?
Thank you, Robert. Okay, to the applicant. My first question, is there parking at the rear of the apartment building?
Yes, yes, there is.
Is there 3 spots for all units?
There's one for each unit, yes.
1 per unit. Okay. That's included in the rent?
Correct.
Okay. Now I'm going to go to the assessor's workup. That worksheet as submitted by the assessor. That would be on his page 3. Would you have that available?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll start at the top. gross potential rent, I believe you said in 2020, it was approximately $45,000. Would that be accurate?
46.
So I'll correct myself because I was trying to go based on backwards from the numbers, but that 2022 actual of 46,897. So 46,000 is what I should have been able to get. But this is 2022 numbers, not 2021.
Okay. So the rent I show for the basement is $900 a month. For the 2-bedroom on the main floor is $1,1016. Is that correct?
Yep.
And the 3-bedroom, was it in 1925?
The 2-bedroom and study is 1,925. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So by my calculation, that's an annual income of 46,092. Would that be accurate for 2020?
Yeah, I calculated as 46,692, but that's in my summary page, but yes.
Okay. And then the vacancy rate, do you accept that 3.2% as the assessor stated?
Did I know because we had a tenant skip and moved to Turkey? So I used the actual of 4,300.
Okay, the assessor allowed 2136, so we're pretty close there. So we're close there. There's no other income. So effective gross income would be the approximately 46,100, less your vacancy allowance of 2,300. No shortfall. Expense ratio. What were your expenses? The assessor's showing 28,999. What are you saying? And regarding not including capital costs, because capital costs would be amortized over a certain period. So and I think you had stated 20,156. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So you had just said out loud 2,300 for vacancy, but I had 4,300, and that gave me the effective gross income of 42,597. And then my actual expenses were 20,176, correct?
Yeah, okay, 176, okay. And so that gives you a net operating income. Did you calculate that?
Yeah.
And what did you come up with?
22,421.
22,000?
Yeah, 421.
Okay, we'll check the numbers later. So your NOI is 22,000. And then you're accepting the cap rate of 5.25 set by the assessor?
I don't accept it, no. I think it should be I think it should be lower, but
yeah. With all due respect, when you lower it, it raises the value. So I think you would like it high.
I'm shooting myself in the foot.
Yeah. I think you want it higher. Because that would increase the value when you lower the cap rate. So you think that
I'm in agreement for this appeal.
525.
So you want it higher than the 5.25%. How's that?
Pretty bad for an accountant, that's all I'm gonna say. Must be having a stressful month.
And your final estimated value is approximately, I'm going to say, between $425,000 and $450,000. I believe that was your statement you made. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. I think we've got a clear picture there. Any requirement for summary, Mr.
Yeah, just, I mean, like, it's really important to submit your mailers every year, so we have a clear idea in regards to what's going on in the property from an income and expense standpoint, because that affects our model. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. the applicant any requirement for summary? I think you've made a good, painted a good, clear picture of what you're requesting and everything, but anything to summarize?
No,
Okay. The panel will consider all the evidence presented as I stated before and leave it with us, and you will hear from us in writing as soon as possible. That concludes file number 162 Evanson. Thank you for appearing, and I apologize for the delay there, but technical issues, right? Okay, thanks again.
so much.
Bye-bye. Does anybody require a quick break before we continue?
I wouldn't
Richard? Are you okay?
mind. 5 minutes?
Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to recess for 5 minutes and let Mr. Smith get settled in there. Sally, if you could put us in camera, please. Thank you, Sally. Sally, can you please swear in the applicant, please?
Please stand. State your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Next item on the property, item number 2, file number 23-343. Address is 435 Cumberland Avenue, and it's a 2024 Realty Assessment Appeal. Matthew, when you're ready, please.
Okay, no problem. Get my stuff up here. Okay, file number 23-343, roll number 130960600000435 Cumberland Avenue. Original assessed value for the April 1st, 2021 reference date was $3,096,000. I made a recommendation to reduce assessment to $2,595,000 rounded. There's an extra zero there. Ignore it. And it's based on the modeled NOI and a 5.25 cap. So the modeled NOI on page 3 is 1.3 to 13 with a 5.25 cap. That brings it to $2,595,000 rounded. I'll just stop there for a moment.
Okay. Mr. Smith, have you had an opportunity to review this and any comments on the recommendation?
Yes, so I have had an opportunity to review it, and I appreciate the city looking at that and recognizing that it should be lower, but we do have a couple of other items to address as well, so.
Okay, thank you. So not accepted. Mr. Barocas, can you please proceed?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a 6-story building, built in 2007. 42 suites only, 3 outdoor parking spots. It's not for profit. Construction Class C masonry bearing walls. Page 2, they've been good estimating their income, expense information, and no recent sales file. So we have on page 3, 42 1-bedrooms, and average monthly rent of $771.05. So it's modeled with our expense ratio at, pardon me, 63.22%. You notice that's quite high. We have this at a lower income quality setting in our model to reflect the fact that it's a not-for-profit. The area, maybe some of the challenges that might exist in and around the property. I'm sure the applicant will touch on that in their presentation. So the expense ratio is higher as in effect of lowering the income quality. The original cap was 4.4. Again, I felt because of kind of the utilitarian nature of the property, which we're gonna see in the pictures, the area, the fact. I felt that 5.25 was more on balance, more reflective of what they would bear on market, taking into consideration its location, but it's also 2007 built. So we got our rent comparables on page 4, and basically, so these are mostly older builds. You can see that they range from 752 to 830, where it's 771. They are all 1 bedroom only, other than the comparable number 4, which does have some 2 bedroom units. So I also did a calculation here for the Midland rents. You can see for 1 bedroom, October 2020, it's 832. And then Centennial and Midland, I think this property is pretty close to the border. You can see for Centennial, it's 975. So 771, the model is reflecting like a below average income quality. Despite the fact that it's a 2007, and that chart on page 5 reflects all ages of properties in that universe, which would include older buildings as well. So I feel very strongly that the rent the model is assigning is fine. Cap rate charts are on pages 6 and 7. I heard my talk from last go around, so I won't touch on it unless I have questions on it. So we've got our construction permit on page 9 for the building, 3.4 million. I mean, that's not including land. We're at 2.595 million after my recommendation. So lower than the cost to construct. And then we have the mailer that they submitted. However, they just showed the potential rent. I believe that some of the expenses were also available online, but I didn't include them in the brief. Regardless, it's a not-for-profit, so they wouldn't be using their income and expenses anyway. I just went with the model line. Finally, rounding out my presentation, pages 15, 16, and 17, I just a photograph of the property. You can see that it's very basic in nature. There are other new builds in and around this area, or kind of renovated warehouses where the condition is or the desirability is far superior, and they're able to garner higher rents. That's what we're not trying to pass this off as at all. You can tell by the pictures, very utilitarian, but new. So I think 70-71 is good on the rent. We got a high expense ratio, and I made a rec on the cap to reflect the issues that I've already mentioned. So recommendation 2.595 million. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Just a few. So for the, and this will cover all of the properties we're dealing today. Given workload, I imagine you haven't had time to inspect any of the 4 properties.
I did not know.
Okay. And you had brought up the cost to construct. Obviously, we're not equating that with the value of the property.
That's correct.
Okay. And you had, I guess, just quickly on page 4. So the subject property has extensive common areas that you wouldn't find in a standard apartment, that being they have a gym on the first floor, and by gym I mean like a full school-sized gym, not a workout room.
To my understanding, I'm just reading the description of the property here.
And then a second floor significant size office. So that would contribute, if I'm looking at page 4, to the gross floor area per unit showing higher than the comps that you have there.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just is simply the gross floor area of the property.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I get it. The 435 Spence, your comp 3, that's immediately adjacent to U of W, I believe, is it not? That particular one, which would probably drive a higher rent than the subject location, just looking at the high end.
It would be advantageous for sure from procuring tenants. It is indeed near the University of Winnipeg.
Okay, and then you had mentioned Midland and Centennial, so looking at Centennial there with the higher rents. Centennial runs, I believe, from the Assiniboine River northward, so all of that, that's correct, is it not? The Centennial covers that South Broadway through downtown to just north of Portage.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, like I mentioned, there's a lot of newer builds in there.
Okay.
Either newer, not newer builds, but like heavily renovated buildings. So again, I'm not trying to say that it ought to be 975 or 832. We're coming in below both of those.
Right, and so the average for Midland for one beds was 832, and the city's about $60 less than that. Getting the rent. Okay. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Richard, any questions with the assessor? You're on mute, Richard.
Sorry. Looking at your comparables, do you have any other nonprofits in the comparables?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And when you talk about a nonprofit as a subject property, is this a kind of nonprofit where they may have a communal kitchen, communal dining area? Are you aware of that?
I mean, I haven't inspected the property, but I mean, the applicant says there's a large gymnasium, there's a meeting room, utilizes a senior center on the second floor, and the third through sixth floors are the tenant floors, and there's two common rooms consuming portions of the third floor. So I can't confirm whether there's a kitchen or not, unfortunately.
Okay. And if I understand correctly, the large gymnasium is isolated to a few people who are on the board of the association that owns the building. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Perhaps the applicant has more information when we get there. Now, looking at a relatively new building, you adjusted your cap rate upward. And I don't know if I heard you correctly. Was that based on the potential condition of the building, or what was that based on, Matthew?
Yeah, so when you look at the pictures of the building on page 15 onwards.
Yeah.
New builds that are newly constructed don't rent out units that look like this. They're higher in quality. Therefore, you know, they get higher rents as well, probably closer to double. So I don't think that, and also, you know, there's a large amount of common area that needs to be maintained. I feel that 5.25 is a more suitable cap, just based on the physical composition of the building and its for-profit income producing potential.
Okay. And when you look at the owners, it says Indochina Association, I believe. Do the tenants have to become members of that association? Do you know?
I do not. I didn't look into the nature of the not-for-profit.
So you don't know if any other fees are paid to the association itself. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't really considering that something to be relevant.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thanks, Richard. Mr. Upton, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, you said these are model rates, model driven rates.
Yes,
And you allowed some changes to those based on the type of facility it is?
basically, it's set at like below or like below average in our system to try and account for the fact that when you look at the pictures, if you look at the city, the 2000 to current day suites are, most of them are better than the pictures we see at the end of my brief, and thus the income producing potential on a for-profit basis is less. So that affects the expense ratio and also the income, but it is modeled. I did change the cap rate as well.
Use a cap rate, the rest is modeled. So you didn't change the rent?
No, I think the rent's fine. If you look at the CMHC tables on page 5, if you will control and scroll, it'll zoom in the Midland and Centennial areas in which the property is close to. The 1-bedrooms are at $975 for Centennial, which again includes some nicer renovated kind of loft warehouses, but also some older, not so nice ones. And Midland, where there's more of a like older buildings. You can see that at 832 at Midland, we're still at 771, a good amount below that. So I feel strongly that we're not overstepping in terms of rent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Matthew, just to confirm, your revised assessment uses the current net NOI, but a cap rate of 5.25, resulting in a recommendation to revise it from $3,096,000 down to $2,595,000. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Smith, bear with us a second. We'll pull up your brief. When you're ready, Mr. Smith, 435 Cumberland Avenue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will start with a quick history of the building, I guess. So was built in 2007. The ownership of the property is a nonprofit, that being the Indochina Chinese Association of Manitoba, Inc. They are a cultural association, obviously, and the intent in building the property was to provide housing for low-income members of their particular cultural community. So for the Chinese community that needed low-income housing for their seniors in particular, actually exclusively it was intended for seniors. Now they built the property and perhaps they didn't do enough research with their community, but the Chinese seniors community did not want to live in that location, in that building. There was very little take up on occupancy. It didn't go well, so they had to adjust and take in other tenant types. So what they've done over time is evolve to taking in to a large degree, obviously other low-income residents that are in need of housing, and to a large degree, this is new immigrants to Canada in many cases that have lower economic means. So that's kind of the background for the property. The ability to pay rent is quite limited by the tenants and occupants of the building, and the background is such that it's always been a challenge to get tenants to locate there. So that is the background of the property. To speak to the challenge of that, of tenanting the property, you need to look at the location of it and then the units themselves. So it's located immediately on Central Park in downtown Winnipeg, north of Portage. This area is quite well known, obviously, for the socioeconomic issues that are in that area. The crime that occurs typically in greater volume in that particular area on the street, in buildings, etc. Obviously, this has an impact on the desirability of properties in that area to be leased out and what people would be willing to pay for them. With regard to the subject property itself, that has transferred into the building as well. Unfortunately, they have had some issues over the last number of years, certainly within this assessment cycle, with crime occurring in the stairwells of the property of various types. There's been numerous call outs of City of Winnipeg police to various incidents over time. So it creates a stigma for the property and kind of an element of fear, and obviously less of a desire to have your home in that particular building. The other thing I would point out is, well, two things. The property has no parking. There's no parking whatsoever for the property, other than 2 spots at the back for staff, I believe. And as the assessor mentioned, the utilitarian nature of the units, but even more so the size of the units. These units, having inspected them personally and been through them, you can see the photos in my brief. They are quite small. I won't say they are bachelor apartments, because they're not. They have a walled off bedroom. But if you look at the size of the bedroom, say on page 11, and you look at the size of the continuous kitchen into living area, say on page 8 through page 9, that's kind of one transitioning into the other, top of page 8, bottom of page 9. These are quite small units, so certainly much smaller than a typical 1-bedroom, closer in size to a bachelor in terms of the overall size. Then the finish level is obviously utilitarian. They're building these very basically with intent for them to last. Unfortunately, given the tendencies that they get in there, tenants often are very hard on the individual units, and they have significant ongoing repairs that come up, as you can see in some of the photos. Jumping back briefly in my brief to page numbers 6 onwards. So this would be your main floor lobby area. You can see the condition of that on the left-hand side. You have entry doors into the gymnasium, which is shown at the top of page 7. Bottom of page 7 is your standard hallway. And I don't think the photos of the office area on the 2nd floor made it in for some reason. Now, the 2nd floor of the building has office area for the association itself. And then they have some individual breakout rooms that were intended again for the Chinese culture for their various uses. Now, it's a significant amount of space. It's not space that could be leased out on the market. It's not leased out on the market, but it adds to that number that the city has as far as gross floor area. So if we run that through the model and deducted those spaces back to a normal size of common area, you'd have a much smaller area, which would then again drive the rent for the units down based on the actual size of the units themselves. One of the panel members there had referred to the gym space, and I guess the other common areas. They were intended again originally for use by the seniors, the Chinese seniors that were intended to be the sole occupants and then the culture itself. And that is still the case. These are not rentable spaces. They're not allowed to be used by the majority of tenants in the building. So there's no revenue potential there for those particular aspects. They do, of course, add expense for maintenance. So that's some background for you. Moving into my brief, page number 3. A bit of history at the top there. Built in 2007. You have 42 one-bedroom units, so all identical. And the assessment appeal history is there for you as well from 2020. I've given some description of property itself at the bottom of the page. You're free to go through that. We probably covered the majority of that. I would, of course, emphasize the deterioration of the property over time, given the tenancies that they've had. We can skip forward into site is shown on my page number 13. You can see there's no parking on site other than 2 under the back of the building, and the location on Central Park at the very north end of Centennial. On my page number 14. Moving forward into the valuation. So as noted in the addenda on the I&E, the actual rental rate charged for these units is $695. While this is on somewhat on the low end of the scale, certainly in terms of rents for one bedrooms out there, it is indicative of what they can achieve on the market, and what is appropriate based on those units and the demand for them. Again, the size of the units and the nature of them has to be taken into account. I'd also point out they're under RTB guidelines, and they can't raise their rates significantly. So jumping from $695 to the city $771 wouldn't be possible. Moving forward into expenses, I believe we accepted the 4.7% vacancy rate. What I will point out in relation to the vacancy rate is, as noted in the I&E, the property in that particular year and in other years has roughly $70,000 in uncollectible rent from tenants that they will never receive. So while we're accepting the vacancy rate of 4.7%, indeed their effective vacancy, if you take into account uncollectible rents, would be significantly greater. So we're using 4.7%. We're deferring to City of Winnipeg's expense allowance parameter at the 63%, given the high degree of common area in the building. We believe that probably encompasses that particular issue for the building. And we can move forward into capitalization rate. So I certainly appreciate the assessor taking into account the fact that the property would have a higher cap rate than the model projected. What I will point out is that it's probably still not where it should be at 5.25. If we look at other properties that have been modeled by the city, I have a property on Valhalla, 10 Valhalla in North Kildonan that had, or rather East Kildonan, that had a model rate of 5.65%. This is a tower block built in the 60s or 70s, well maintained in North Kildonan. Looking at cap rate from another perspective, and each of you has heard this before, so I won't run through it in great detail. However, I will point it out at the top of my page number 19. Subject property is nonprofit and is intended for affordable housing. Valuing these is difficult as they rarely transact on the marketplace. typically don't transact on the marketplace, so there are no sales. And they can't legitimately be apples to apples compared directly to standard market apartment transactions, as social housing properties have considerable restrictions and burdens that are not present for standard market apartments. Rental income restrictions, rental market restrictions, additional operating expenses, physical condition, and disposition restrictions can impact the market value. I quote an expert in the field, Mr. Richard Polton, an accredited appraiser from the United States, in his book, Valuation and Market Studies for Affordable Housing. Developing a market-derived cap rate for an income-restricted property begins with an analysis of the available rates for similar unrestricted or market properties. Then these rates are adjusted based on the risk factors that an investor would consider in developing a cap rate. The result is a cap rate based on market factors and associated risks. In the final analysis, property tax assessment must take into account the public purpose of the project, the overall benefits and burdens, and the restricted nature of the operating rents. So that's the background. There would be significantly greater risk in acquiring a property such as this versus a standard market apartment in the open market. The bottom of page 19, we present our cap rate comparables. I'll point out three here for some perspective. 2390 McPhillips, which the city has in their brief as well. Significant new property, 90 units, built in 2015. Sold in 2020 at a cap rate of 5%, according to our calculations. This is the Lady Joyce, just off, on McPhillips, but a little bit off. Two other new ones, number 5, 703 St. Anne's, built in 2020. Sold in 2021 at a cap rate of 5.3%. This backs onto the same river. It's new luxury apartments. And then you have 100 Southview, number 6, townhouse apartments built in 2015. 148 of them sold in 2021 at a cap rate of just under 5% at 4.95%. Now, that's the bottom end of the range. That's what large scale national and very large local investors are willing to pay for premium properties on the marketplace. So you're looking at 5 to 5.3% essentially at the bottom end there. From there, cap rates typically go up unless you're buying a property to renovate it and change the income stream, which obviously is an entirely different sphere and does not produce a market capitalization rate, as you're not purchasing based on the in-place income stream. So the balance of our properties are typically smaller for the most part. They will be walk-up apartments, although 1 or 2 of them are not. If we look at 704 and 708 Kildare, trading at 5.25%, selling in 2020. Again, a good indication of large scale properties and what astute investors are willing to pay in that particular time frame. The other thing I would point out with regard to capitalization rate is that interest rates were shifting as of the valuation date of April 1, 2021. The end of COVID, we had a very significant impact. Well, during COVID, we had a very significant drop off in the trade of commercial properties and multi-res properties in city of Winnipeg. So there were not a lot of transactions during that time frame. But one of the reasons for this was we did see interest rates starting to creep up, and the anticipation of further increases in interest rates affecting what potential purchasers' borrowing costs would be, and ultimately what their return would be. So what were the cap rates were anticipated that they would be going up as impacted by the financing available to purchase such properties. So if you had a rate of 5%, initially you could anticipate that would be that would be increasing somewhat based on the mortgage rates available. So that background, we also have Collier's and CB Richard Ellis commentary regarding cap rates for the relevant time frame. I've given a bit of history here as well with somewhat stable cap rates. Collier's indicating high-rise cap rates ranging from 5 to 6% in 2020. CB Richard Ellis indicating high rises between 5 and 5.5% in their capitalization rate market report. Now, all that being said, the subject property is a nonprofit apartment, doesn't provide parking. It's in a very poor location. It has low rents that you wouldn't be able to achieve more on. And it's in a very socioeconomically challenged area. It's wouldn't be a prime target as an acquisition. And if you were to look at it, you'd assign a significantly higher capitalization rate to reflect these issues. So we've used a cap rate of 5.75% in our analysis for those reasons. This is summarized on my page 24, where our final value is developed side by side with the cities. So we have the in-place rents of $695 reflective of the units themselves. All of the other parameters are there. Using the 5.75% cap rate, we end up at $2,135,000 as the market value. The addendum materials include the income and expense and obviously relevant decisions from the 2023 assessment cycle. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Matthew, any questions of the applicant's evidence presented?
Yes, a couple. On page 24, let's go right to the workout. The rental income that you use was $350,280. That's the rental potential income, or rather the rental income that they reported on their mailer. Is that correct?
I believe so. That should be 100% occupancy.
Okay, so and you mentioned on the onset of your presentation that this is a not-for-profit building. Is that correct?
It is a not-for-profit building, yes.
And I think you also mentioned that their mandate is to provide, not to make as much money as possible, or so much words, but to provide housing for people and immigrants of low income. That'd be fair to say?
It's fair to say, but I mean, the context is that they do need to break even and charge rental rates that allow them to do so, which are essentially market rental rates for units of the size and condition they have.
Okay. Did you provide any rent comparables to support that?
I don't believe any were included in this particular brief.
Okay. Did you put any weight on the fact how much lower the rent is than the market CMHC rents in regards to, you know, seeing the city's rent versus the actual rent? Like, did you you didn't think that you don't think the units could get $771 on a for-profit basis, basically?
They're challenged as far as renting and collecting the units that they, in the condition they and size they are now. If they were to charge more, I think it would just be exacerbated. They have $70,000 in uncollectible rent from the current year as of the valuation date.
Is this building open for anyone to rent to, or is it restricted to by ethnicity or income, or is it just open to anyone? Like,
it's not restricted by ethnicity or specifically income, to my knowledge.
okay. Okay, is there a waiting list to get into the property?
I think there's waiting lists on all apartment properties in Winnipeg.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't actually answer that question. I'm unaware of whether they keep one or not.
Okay. In regards to the operation of the gym, the restrictive nature, that's a management decision, be correct? Fair to say?
Well, it's not space and so I toured the property with one of the other assessors and they were obviously saw all of the space that I did and they understood that it was not a rentable area. So it's not that they have a gym that could be generating revenue for the property.
This building is about a 10-minute walk from the University of Winnipeg. That'd be fair to say?
It is in somewhat close proximity to the University of Winnipeg, but again, if you look at the site picture and the location aerial as to where it's actually located, it's located on Central Park, and I don't need to go into the issues that they have there versus perhaps property located on Sherbrooke or wherever right by the University of Winnipeg. They would be considerably different in terms of quality of tenancy, location, etc.
Do you think this would be a good candidate for student housing, given its proximity to the University of Winnipeg?
I don't really.
Okay, just in terms of the capitalization rate, I think that's page 19. So page 19, I know you on a couple buildings, the first being 2390 McPhillips. You have it at a 5% cap. I know I put it at 4.79. What methodology did you use to come up with the 5%?
Well, we followed standard appraisal methodology in reviewing the income and expense and the development of the cap rate, as I'm sure the city hopefully has as well.
Yeah, okay. So you did like a stabilization of historical income and expenses?
Yes, the property was looked at in detail and we followed the accepted practice of how to develop appropriate capitalization rates based on the actuals from the property itself.
Okay.
What I was indicating by pointing out a couple of properties there was that those are newly built properties essentially and would form the peak of the market. So essentially the bottom end of the cap rate range that one would see on the market.
Do you think that like 2390 McPhillips North Perimeter beside like a Walmart would be superior to like a Sage Creek or a Bridgewater Forest or a Sterling Line Parkway? Would be equal, or would it be perhaps a little bit less unattractive? Less attractive.
Well, we're not looking at Sage Creek here. We're looking at Central Park versus the properties that are on my chart on page number 19.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I know you mentioned that you said it's the bottom of the cap rate range, but do you think that that's the best area, or do you think there's superior areas in the city of Winnipeg to North McPhillips beside a Walmart?
Well, 2390 McPhillips is not beside the Walmart. That would be the one that's this is the Lady Joyce, which is
Okay, Matthew, Mr. Smith, the applicants provided a range of cap rate information for us. The panel will look at these cap rates and decide which are inferior, okay, and we'll make our judgment based on the comparison to the subject property.
Yeah, for sure. Gotcha. Okay, and then just my last question: at your assessed value, it's only 50,839 a unit for 2007 building. Do you think that might be a bit on the low side?
Well, I think we've gone through each of the components of valuing the property, and if we look at it in relation to the market, the final value makes sense. I'm not breaking it out on a per unit basis. It is where it is. It has the challenges it is. We have drug dealing in the stairwells on occasion and other activities. I mean, it's not a prime investment opportunity that would drive a lot of value.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the applicant?
Yes. Do you know if it continued to be a nonprofit into the reference here?
Yes, and it did. It still is.
Okay. And I noted that you mentioned it's not exclusive to the cultural community that it was designed for. Is it for seniors or is it for all ages?
It's all ages. It was intended for Chinese Canadian seniors, but that proved untenable, so it's now everybody in all ages.
I understand. Okay. Now, again, we come back to my question earlier. Nonprofit sometimes denotes that there might be a community kitchen, a community dining area. Is that the case in here? Do you know?
No, there's no community dining area. What they have is that gymnasium that there's a photo of. There is an attached kitchen to that gymnasium, but no specific dining area. And then the second floor is office space and some meeting rooms.
Right. Now, can you tell us approximately the square footage of the gymnasium and the offices and meeting rooms?
Unfortunately, I can't. And I did ask for that information, but a floor plan wasn't immediately available or provided to me in the span of time. I guess what I could say is that you can get a good indicator that it's quite a significant sized gym at the top of my page number 7.
Yes, I was looking at that. Would the square footage of those premises be included in the city's 36,197 square feet? Do you know?
It would, yes. It's the gross floor area of the building. So
Yes.
that space, the office space, all would be included in the city's gross floor area, and then divided by the number of suites. So as I was saying, the units themselves are actually quite small,
Yes.
closer to bachelor size.
Their model defines that as leasable space, and you contend that it is not leasable.
That being the gym and
Gym and office.
yeah, it's never been considered leasable space by either the city or ourselves in the modeling of the value for the property.
Okay. Is that something that should be factored into future consideration, do you know? Just
No, I would say not, because it's not as if they could be generating revenue from those spaces.
Trevor, I meant, could it be deducted from the leasable space?
Well, I'm not sure how the city would be able to do that for their modeling as far as determining kind of a size for the units, but it does skew it, I guess, is the comment. So
It seems to, yeah. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, any questions?
Yes, the market, you chose a market rent of $695. Do you know the actual rent collected in the building?
that is the actual rent collected in the building.
That is
Yeah.
actual.
I
That's an
didn't
actual
choose
number.
it, that's the actual rent.
So that takes out bad debt and everything else.
No, it doesn't take out bad debt. They have about $70,000 in uncollectible rent in the reference here. So of the 350,000, I think that I have based on the 695, 70,000 of that was uncollectible. versus the vacancy allowance of 16,500 roughly. I haven't made allowance for that. That's simply, that's what they're experiencing in that property, which gives you an indication of, the facility we're looking at.
So the get that clear, the 695 should be reduced by the 70,000 bad debt.
Well, I'm not stating
And that is a market rent, of course, 695, so.
Yes,
But
so
the actual amount collected,
well, that would certainly, bring down, the overall, NOI. I wouldn't suggest that, you would allow $70,000 as uncollectible rent, as that is that year. They do have ongoing issues with uncollectible rent, but that would create an unsupportable value for the property, and I wouldn't do that in my valuation.
okay. The only difference you have with the assessor is on the rent and the cap rate.
Correct.
Those are the two issues. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert. And I have no questions for the applicant. Matthew, any requirement for summary?
Yeah, I mean, the decision to rent it at less than $700 unit was a management decision. That's not how we're valuing the property. Say they decide, oh, we're gonna run it at a loss to try and fill this building up. Does that mean the building's worth nothing? We're trying to value it using what a potential purchaser buying this property to make as much money as they can off of it would be able to get from a rental basis. We're way below CMHC. It's a 2007, adjusted the cap up from, the 4 3/4, 4.5 range for a newer build up to 5 3/4 to take into consideration the utilitarian nature of the building and also the neighborhood that it's in. That being said, anyone buying this building, I think they would probably use it as student housing, fix it up, and it's a 10-minute walk from the U of W. So I think that 73,000 a unit for a newer build, despite its challenges, is a pretty good deal. That's my summation.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any requirement for summary?
Yes, just briefly. I think the 2007 construction date is somewhat misleading in terms of the subject property. Obviously, you can see the condition of the property. It's deteriorated quite significantly over time and will continue to do so with the tenancies that they were able to draw to that property. Now, the rent that they're charging is not based on let's fill this building up. It's based on breaking even essentially, and perhaps having a slight profit as a nonprofit. They're guided to do, and is based on what's achievable in the marketplace. The units are tiny, they're very utilitarian, and it's located where it is. I think the components speak for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. That concludes item number 2, 435 Cumberland Avenue. Next item on the docket is item number 3, file number 23-341. It's a 2024 residential appeal, realty appeal, pardon me, and its address is 50 Hargrave Street. When you're ready, Matthew.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so file 23-341, roll number 12097806780 50 Hargrave Street, reference date April 1st, 2021. Model assessed value was 12,300,000. If you go to, just join me on page 3 for the income workup. You can see this got a 4.15 cap rate. I don't believe that's supportable. So using the modeled net operating income, 510, 450, you use a 4 3/4 cap rate that generates my new recommended valuation of 10,746,000. So it's the model valuation, again, using the 4.75 cap rate. I'll just pause there.
Okay, could I get a rounded value, please?
Yes, 10,746,000.
Okay. All right. That's based on the existing NOI according to the city and a revised cap rate to 4.75%.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Before we proceed, Mr. Smith, any comments on that recommendation? Verbal recommendation?
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I appreciate the city having a more detailed look at it there and making that change, but we're not in agreement necessarily, no.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, please continue.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Okay, so 6 stories built in 2021, so we don't have any site-specific income and expense information. We've got 65 suites, 23 outdoor parking spots. It's downtown. So on page 3, it's 52 1-bedrooms, 13 2-bedrooms, 65 total units. The average monthly rent we have is $1,135.60. So it's all model 39.5 to the expense ratio, and using that 510 450, I changed the cap rate based on my cap rate findings, which I'll touch on a little bit further on in my presentation. The rent comparables are found on page 4. So we're at 1,135.60, which falls within the range of the comparables at 1058 and 1263. Now, some of these, you see some of these buildings are older. I think most notably, the way I would place would be the comparable 2 and comparable 4, which are newer buildings, which are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. They're in the $1,200 range for 1,135 on the rents. And we got the rental from the owner, so we know what they're getting actually, but I can't put that in my brief. Cap rate chart is on page 5, and my cap rate evidence from my site-specific analysis is done on page 6. So again, 2390 McPhillips would be the property I would deem most similar to this build. 90 suites, 4.79 cap. So that's why I went with the 4 3/4 on a rounding basis. This property is located downtown, 50 Hargrave. Type this in. I think it's in the Broadway area. Yes, it is in the Broadway area. So, I mean, 2390 McPhillips is in the suburbs. So, I mean, some people would prefer the suburbs, some people would prefer downtown. I didn't make any adjustment to the 475, the 4 3/4 rounded determination there for neighborhood, because I didn't feel I had any real ground to solidly stand up for making an adjustment above or below that 4 3/4. So I put it to 4 3/4. I think that's much more supportable than the model put out. So then we have on page 8 the permit, but the permit fortunately does not have a permit value. It just shows it was built, it was issued in January of 2019. Then we go to page 10, which shows the advertisement from the internet. There's a description of the property, trendy Broadway, Assiniboine, steps away from the river trail. Kind of near the central business district, downtown Manning's, True North, so on and so forth. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the area. I won't read it all out. To you, upper suites have large private terraces. There's a shared use rooftop terrace. Some covered outdoor parking. Okay, and covered outdoors at 175 per unit according to this advertisement. And then there's just some photographs. You can see terrace on the roof and the how it faces the streets at the front of the building above that. Then we got some pictures of the units, so as opposed to the last property, this is more in line with modern tastes and condition, hence the rent is much higher. I think that's it. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, again, I'd like to thank the city for having a more detailed look at that cap rate and making a change. That being said, looking at the capitalization rate for the property, so I think you had mentioned earlier in the hearing today, the model is only as good as the information that you receive and put into it. Do you know if there were, do you know how many, or if there were many trades of newly built or newer built, say 2015 and onwards, large scale properties that would have gone into the model for cap rate sales?
There wasn't, to my knowledge, when I did my review, 2390 McPhillips is the best indicator.
Okay, so there's that one, but probably either none or very few others.
Yeah,
I suspect.
Based on, I did it a while ago, and it's not only does it have to trade, but we also have to, have mailer history to be able to calculate it.
Yeah.
A stabilized net operating income, the mailer history has to be good and it has to be open market, and it's share sale. It's kind of hard to calculate that too. So we got 2390 McPhillips as the best indicator.
That is my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
I have none, thanks.
Thank you. Robert, any questions?
None for me, thank you.
Okay. Matthew, my only question, are we located between Broadway and Assiniboine, close to the river?
Yes, we are
Okay.
we're halfway between Broadway and Assiniboine.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you. Mr. Smith, when you bear with me 1 second to get to your brief here, please. Okay, Mr. Smith, when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll point out in the beginning here that both the city and ourselves end up about $2,000 apart in terms of net operating income. I'm not going to go through in elaborate detail the differences between it. There are differences, but we end up at roughly the same point. You can choose amongst those as you wish, based on the information available, obviously. But that is our starting point. So the main difference is, of course, capitalization rate, the city now being at 4.75% and ourselves at 5.25%. So subject property, as mentioned, is in the South Broadway area, between Broadway and Assiniboine on the west side of the street, built in 2021. Total of 65 units, and the majority of them being 1 bedrooms, with 13 of them being 2 bedrooms. So I didn't work out that split, but it certainly skews towards the 1 bedroom side. The pictures of the property itself begin on the following page. They do have parking on site. Interestingly, the way the building was built, probably site limitations, I guess. They have covered parking, but essentially half of your car is covered. So either your windshield or your back street. Not that that's a big deal, but you're not in fully covered parking for the most part. The units themselves are nice. It's newly constructed in 2021. It's not luxury apartment living, as many and perhaps most new builds tend to portray, but it is certainly good quality, well located, and built to a nice spec. But we're not talking about luxury countertops and islands and elaborate bathrooms, different flooring, etc. You can see photos of them in my pictures running through page number 10. Certainly a nice new apartment. Now, the units are not huge. They're not petite, but they do tend to be a little bit on the smaller side in terms of the unit sizes themselves. Site is shown on page 11, location being on page number 12 of my brief. The financial analysis, I've given you the rental rate ranges on my page number 14 there. We've given you CMHC background. With regard to Centennial and Winnipeg, not that this would necessarily fall within those as it's new. And we've given you new build apartment comparables at the bottom of page 15. Suffice it to say, the rents that they receive are at market. The first year of operation that we had was 2021 year end. So we've looked at those rents and made a minor 0.5% reduction in order to take them back to the April 1st, 2021 valuation date. Typically, you're going to see year-on-year increases in rent, so there would naturally be a reduction from that time frame that they're quoted as back to the valuation date. It ends up being minor, but there it is. We also include parking and laundry revenue in the analysis. Vacancy, we've given you all of the stats for the various categorizations of vacancy. If we look at vacancy based on apartments renting about $1,300 a month. One bedrooms are at 8.9%, two beds at 4.3%. We look at new build apartments, so 2005 onwards.
Mr. Smith, with all due respect, it's noted that your net operating income is actually a little bit higher than the city. So maybe we could focus on the difference in the capitalization rate.
And certainly skip forward to that, just very
Thank you.
covering it. So there's a difference in cap. That's why it's a new build. They have higher vacancy. Moving forward, page 19, capitalization rates. Challenge that the city has with regard to valuing a property such as this is that there were exceptionally few transactions of large scale new build or newer build market apartments in recent history. We have essentially three, that being my comps numbers 3, 5, and 6. That being 2390 McPhillips at 5%. 90 units there, 703 St. Anne's, luxury apartment on the Seine River, transacting at 5.3%, 34 units there, and a townhome development in Southwest Winnipeg on Southview, 148 units, 2021 sale at 4.95%. So we're looking at 5%, 5.3%, and 4.95%. So you're essentially at as I mentioned, this would be the peak of the market in terms of desirability from an institutional investor that would be willing to pay the maximum for the property. And you're looking at essentially 5 to 5.25% at that level. The subject property, it's nice, it's newly built, it's well located. Certainly, you have renters that would rather locate in the suburbs, some that would rather locate downtown. It's not a great deal of difference between that in terms of desirability from an investment perspective. Pardon me. What we're looking at here is property that's a little bit more basic than the higher end properties such as the Southview and St. Anne's properties. In terms of the build out of the units, the size of the units, amenities, etc. Yes, it has a rooftop patio as shown in the assessor's brief, and I think in mine. That's essentially the limit of the amenities for the property. There's no on-site gym. There's no bicycle lockers. There's no things of that nature. So it is slightly different, obviously, than some of these other newer built properties that are being assessed as well. So if we look at the cap rate range, obviously it varies considerably, but the bulk of the properties are in between that 5% and call it 5.75% at the top end, that being the bulk of your transactions. Now, many of these are smaller and walk-ups, so they're somewhat less comparable, but that gives you a background on what astute investors are willing to pay in the marketplace. So again, we have the same CBRE and Collier's information ranging from 5 to 5.5, 5 to 6% for properties such as this. The subject property, for the reasons that I've stated, we've applied a capitalization rate of 5.25% in our valuation. Within the range of those sales of newer properties of significant size. Valuation summary is shown on page 24. Using our NOI of 512, 450, and 5.25, we come to $9,761,000 as a rounded market value. The addenda includes the I&E from the subject property in its first operational year. We have no other information to work on as it didn't exist in 2020, so we've provided that for background. And we include some decisions from the relevant year. What I will point out is the property that was meant to be included there, 20 Cal Gardner, new construction market apartment in Transcona on Peguis, well located, acres of parking, lots of amenities, luxury apartment. We did have a decision on that at 5% in this current assessment cycle as well. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Matthew, any questions of the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Robert, any questions of the applicant?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none either. Requirement for summary by either party. Matthew?
I'm okay, thanks.
Thank you. Trevor?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 50 Hargrave Street, item number 3. Next item on the docket is item number 4, file number 23-344, address 130 Sage Creek Boulevard. We're dealing with a 2024 realty assessment appeal. Matthew, bear with us 1 second here and we'll pull up.
Mr. Chair, may I ask for a bit of a recess?
Oh, okay. Yes, of course, Richard. Yeah.
Minutes,
Okay, 5 minutes?
maybe 7 to 10.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, Sally, could you put us in camera or a recess, please?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Sally. Okay, so we're dealing with item number 4, file number 23-344, 130 Sage Creek Boulevard, 2024 Realty Assessment Appeal. Matthew, when you are ready, please.
Okay. File 23-344, roll number 06-093466725, 130 Sage Creek Boulevard, built in 2019, reference date April 1st, 2021, assessed value $29,336,000. 113.
Okay, sorry, we're all on.
So 2019, 102 suites, 103 indoor parking, 56 outdoor parking. No recommendation on this one. Page 2, with the mailer, no issue getting that. Information from the owner, no subject, sale history. The income is found on page 3. The workup, we've got 30 at 1 bedroom, 64 2-bedroom for 102 suites. The average monthly rent we have as per the model is $1,775.81. With model vacancy expense ratio and cap rate at 4.55%. Generates cap evaluation of 29,336,264. Got a rate comparable here on the next page. So the newer buildings here are comprised of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and they range from 1657 to 1799. Their years build range from 2015 up to 2020. So we fall within the range. We've got our cap rates table on page 5 and 6. We've talked about municipal act excerpts. So we also have income and expense mailer here on page 8. Just use the modeled valuation for this property. I know they further workup it showed the net operating income loss, but they also included depreciation and mortgage interest, which isn't something those are line items for the purpose of calculating net operating income and being used for valuation. Just kind of looking ahead, I know the applicants and I were separated by about 20,000 on net operating income, which is in the 1.3 million mark, so we're pretty close. It mostly comes down to capitalization, but not 100% in that regard. So then we've got the photographs. Sorry, on page 9, going forward, we're able to snag off the internet and show that again, modern tastes, amenities, new build, well located in Stage Creek. It's a newer neighborhood. It's surrounded by residential. It's got a field on one side. It's got another apartment to the north. And it does have some commercial, about half would walk to the east, but there is a property by the looks of it separating it, at least on Google Maps from what I see. And that would be the Sage Creek shopping area, where they've got the Bank of Montreal and Shoppers Drug Mart. So there is a little bit of commercial around, but not nearly the same level of commercial surroundings as you'd find at 2390 McPhillips, where 2390 McPhillips has flanked by a car dealership. To one side, truck rental, to the other side, a Walmart, to the third side, and then Templeton Avenue to the north. So I had 4 3/4 for that property. This one, the model's putting out 4.55, so a little bit lower. I think the area is better. I think Sage Creek is a more desirable area than North McPhillips. Hence, no recommendation on the cap rate for this one. That's my list. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Did you mention the assessed value? I'm not sure if I heard it.
29,336,000.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Richard, any questions?
I have none either.
Thank you. Robert?
None for me right now, thank you.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking at 130 Sage Creek Boulevard, built in 2019. This is a 55 plus market rental apartment built in Sage Creek, as already mentioned. We have a total number of suites of 102, skewing towards the one beds, 68 one beds, 34 two beds. The photos of the property begin on page 4. There is underground parking, which is included in the rent, and a couple of other amenities. It's a well-located new build property certainly in a good location in the city. The finishes are there for you to see. It's of good quality. And we can move forward. The site is shown on page 11. There is obviously outdoor parking as well on site, and the location is shown on my page number 12. We move forward into the valuation of the property itself. As Matthew has mentioned, we do have a few differences between our valuations in getting to the NOI. So we are apart by a little over $20,000. There's reasons for that. I won't belabor the point, simply point out the differences here. So our rental rates are actually quite similar to the property, just slightly under. They're quoted on page 14 there. As you can see, the one beds are nearly $1,600 and over for the rental rate. Two beds at $2,021 with an average rent of $1,773. So quite high rental rates. We give you market comps on the bottom of page 15 to compare that to. Certainly falls within those ranges. So I accept that they're at a market rent level, an appropriate market rent level. We then include the exterior parking as well as storage revenue that the property had for the relevant time frame. Vacancy, this is a difference. I'm not going to go through it again in great detail, but if the panel would look at the chart at the bottom of page 17, this is vacancy rate by rental range and bedroom type. So if you go to the 1,300 above, which all of our units are, October 2020, 8.9% vacancy for one beds, 4.3 for two beds, with an overall average of 5% at that rental rate level. You move on to the next page, newer properties, 2005 construction onwards. You have one beds at 6.1% and two beds at 3.1%. So based on the market vacancy, we've applied a vacancy rate of 5% in our analysis. The expense allowance, we only had a single year of operation when the property was during lease up, so it's not truly representative of expenses for the apartment. It would be too low, the expenses, so we don't want to come up with an unreasonable valuation of the property. We've deferred to the city of Winnipeg's expense allowance in arriving at our expenses for the property. So these are differences between our NOI and the city's. You can see that we end up just over $20,000 apart. But again, there are reasons for those differences. Cap rate being the main issue here. Now, again, I've already stated it is a quality property, newly built in a good location with good amenities, etc. That's not an issue here. What's at issue is what's an appropriate capitalization rate for a property such as this. So the city's model is dependent on having appropriate information to go into it. There were exceptionally few sales of newly built market apartments in the relevant time frame for the city to populate their model with, essentially one property, that being 2390 McPhillips. There were a couple of others, which we have in our chart on page number 19, but essentially you're looking at 3 sales. So the model has very little information to go on, and in my opinion, skews certainly to the low side. The 3 new sales that we're looking at, 2390 McPhillips, built in 2015, 90 units, sold in 2020 at 5%. 703 St. Anne's, built in 2020, sold in 2021, 34 luxury units, trading at 5.3%. Probably the closest in terms of both location and the type of units as the subject property. And then we have the townhomes at 100 Southview, 148 units, 2021 sale, just under 5%. So that's essentially the range that we're looking at. Call it 5 to 5.3%. The ones that are the most comparable to the subject. We have used a cap rate of 5.25% again for this property, and the reasoning for that being the same. If we look at the April 1, 2021 valuation date and the change in mortgage interest rates that would be available to investors, as well as the anticipated by everybody shift in rental rates or shift in interest rates upwards over time, you can see that there was significant pressure on interest rates at that time upwards, and any increase obviously in interest rates is going to impact what an astute investor would be willing to pay, as it changes their return directly as well. So if the rate goes up a 1/4 point or 1/2 point, you have a direct impact on capitalization rate as well. Not 1-to-1 necessarily, but there is a shift in the return that an investor would expect. So we've used 5.25 for those reasons. Our valuation summary is on page 24. Using the 5.25 cap in our NOI, we come to $25,014,000. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Matthew, any questions of the applicant?
Just touching on the interest rate comments you made at the end. So you agree that when COVID happened, the interest rate actually dropped a couple times. Is that not correct?
Perhaps at the very beginning, and then it was shifting as of the valuation date. It was on an upward trajectory.
Okay, so at the valuation date, had it shifted up to where it was, or was it just beginning to shift up, where it was lower than it would have been, say, in 2019? 2020.
I haven't got that chart, unfortunately, included in the material here, so I'm not going to.
Okay, no problem. That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the applicant?
I have none, thanks.
Thank you. Robert?
No, I have no questions of the applicant. We'd like to readdress one to the assessor about the cap.
Okay.
The previous property, 50 Hargrave, you suggested a cap rate of 4.75.
Yep.
This one you're at 4.55. What is
Yes.
that difference?
I think this is a great area for rental. It's got underground parking. It's in Sage Creek, up and coming new area. There's, as far as I know, very little social issues around that area compared to downtown. 2390 McPhillips is not in a good location. It's next to a Walmart. It's got car dealerships around it. There's traffic going in and out constantly that anyone living there would have to go in and out. You always just give it a Google map if you want to. This is not the same kind of situation. I think this is a better location than 2390 McPhillips. I'd say 2390 McPhillips, it's newer, but it's not in a good spot. 55 Harvey, I'm not saying it's not in a good spot, but I don't see it as, like the applicant said, I don't have any real, oh, it should be higher or it should be lower to hinge on, because some people like downtown, some people don't like downtown. So that's why that one was in line with the cap rate calculations for 2390 McPhillips. I think this is a better spot.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And I have no questions. Does either party require a summary?
I do not, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 130 Sage Creek Boulevard. Next property on the docket is, excuse me, file number 23-345, item number 5, address 165 Sage Creek Boulevard. We're dealing with a 2024 realty assessment appeal. Matthew, when you are ready.
Okay, thank you very much. It'll straighten out here. Okay, so file number 23-345. Roll number 0609347330 165 Sage Creek Boulevard. 28,702,000. Model April 1st, 2021. So it's same neighborhood, same surroundings as the last property. 2001, 2021, 2022. We've got 100 units, 77 indoor, 112 outdoor. So we've got our income value summary on page 3. It's 4.5 cap, so in line. That's what the model put out. Last one was 4.55, where the 0.05 difference was. This one is slightly newer. I don't know if that will make a complete difference. I do know when you buy a new car, it is more expensive than the one year after. So regardless, we're at 28,702,222 with an average monthly rent by the model 1,874.75, 41 1 bedroom, 52 bedroom, and 9 bachelor units. Better comparables on page 4. Just kind of tailoring my talk. We're about 30,000 apart in terms of net operating income, in the 1.2, 1.3 range. So I think that amounts to 2-3%. We're pretty close. So not a heck of a lot of difference. Again, just like the last one, most of the difference does revolve around what cap rate we've assigned, the model's assigned, what the applicant is assigned to the property. Cap rate charts, again, we've talked about it. Again, 2390 Phillips, we've touched on thoughts on that. And then we just have the pictures that follow. So again, starting on page 8, you can see the pictures. Really nice new modern amenities. It's like a really nice place to live, in my opinion. It's got a tenant lounge, games room. It's got a yoga studio and fitness center, multi-purpose room, bike storage, etc. So that would be my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Mr. Smith, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Just one really. So I was looking at the rental income. So the rental income that the city has is identical to what the subject property would have in its first year of operation, which was 2022 or 2021. Was that taken directly from them?
I'm not sure. I do know when we put these buildings onto the roll, we do ask for their rent roll.
It just seems very exact, that's all.
Yeah, so if that's the case, I mean, it's not my evidence, right?
Yeah.
So I can't say
No worries.
for sure. I just, there are some both reference rents at the very end of my brief, but I can't comment on that, not having the notes in the system that I would have if I was beaming in here instead of being here, so sorry, can't answer that.
Yeah, no problem. That's my only question. Thanks.
Thank you. Richard, any questions of the assessor?
I have none, thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Smith, when you are ready, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to address the cap rate issue a little bit to start with, 2390 McPhillips, built in 2015, as Matthew said, it's located just off of McPhillips in a little bit more commercial area than the subject property. It's not quite as luxury oriented as these two properties in Sage Creek that we're looking at. It's different in that way, granted. Certainly Sage Creek is a nice area to live in. 2390 might be somewhat more utilitarian than that in terms of the location, but we're not valuing strictly location. What we're valuing is looking at the property as an investment property and what the risks for that are. So if we look at 2390 McPhillips, which is a single sale, we can't rely on single sales to direct our cap rate determination. We look at 2390 McPhillips, it probably has less risk because it has lower rents, and to my knowledge, doesn't have any vacancy issues there. Whereas we have a property that's a little more peripheral in terms of the city. You have to drive a fair distance to downtown, certainly from here. But more so, the rents in this particular property, as well as the previous one, are on the upper end of the market rental rate range out there. So there's less people out there to rent them, and there's certainly greater risk in filling those units, as evidenced by the vacancy stats that I've got in my material. So while it's a very nice place, we can't say that because it's Sage Creek, it should get a lower cap rate. That's not quite how that would translate. So let's move into the property itself. So it was built in 2022. It's slightly newer than the last one, but essentially in the exact same location across the street, kitty corner, and has relatively the same amenities in terms of the amenities on the property. It has underground parking, which is included in the rent. It has the various rooms that Matthew had referred to, but the units themselves are of a similar level of finish and layout, size, etc. So you're looking essentially at the same property, just ever so slightly newer, which does not change the cap rate. Cap rate is not tied to a 2-year difference in construction date. Now, the model may make an adjustment on that basis, but the market would see no difference between 2019 and 2021. Photos are there for you to see. Feel free to go through those. The site is shown on page 11 and the location on page number 12. So all of that information is there for you to see. Moving into the valuation itself, I've given you the actual rental rates for the subject property as of the date of that construction date. So built in 2022, these are from 2022. So they are slightly post-reference, but they are what the property was charging as of that time frame. So you can see the studios, of which there are 9, rent for $13.50. So that's essentially bachelor. 1 bed, $16.75, 2 beds over $2,000, and 3 beds at $23.25. Now that's rental rates as of the end of 2022. Obviously, those need to be brought back to the valuation date of April 1, 2021. So we've made a 1% deduction in rental rate to account for that in our valuation. Gives you an overall average rent of $18.56 per month. Our comps are there on page 15. It falls in line with the market. We've then included the parking revenue from outside. We only had a third of the year, so we extrapolated the remainder of the year to increase the parking revenue. The same for the storage revenue. We have applied the same 5% vacancy rate that we did for 130 Sage Creek. And the expenses, obviously we don't have a full year of operational expenses to look at here. So we have deferred to the City of Winnipeg's expense allowance at 40.69%, which for some reason is, I think, a little different than 130. In any case, there are some differences in terms of unit counts, etc., between the two. So that's how we get to our NOI, is somewhat different than the city's. And you can see that our original rent was identical to the city's. We made that reduction based on rents being slightly lower, obviously as of the valuation date versus when these were reported. And we've applied the cap rate of 5.25% for the exact same reasons that we've already discussed. And this gives us our final market value of $24,062,000. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Matthew, any questions of the applicant?
Just a couple, one cap. So for 2390 McPhillips, I know we have a disagreement in regards to the cap rate, but you've assigned that a 5% cap, right?
Yes.
So are you saying that's the best type of newly built property there could possibly be in the city of Winnipeg? Or could there be some property that was built in another region where you would make an adjustment downwards to that cap rate?
Well, we would need to have evidence in order to do that, either upwards or downwards. When we look at the three that I pointed out there, we have 100 Southview, located in an area very equivalent to Sage Creek. My apologies, we've been talking for so long here that the area is slipping my mind right now. We all know it, but I think it's Bridgewater. Yeah, it's in Bridgewater. Thank you. Again, certainly a very comparable area, 2021 sale. Yes, we would see that as essentially the peak of the market.
And that property at Southview, that would be basically like it's townhouses, but it's like what amounts to like single family homes stuck together.
Yes, but they're townhomes, but they are rental townhomes. Yes,
like they have garages. That would be a completely different sort of potential investment. Would you not agree?
Somewhat, yes. They are different in terms of the structures themselves. Demand, Bridgewater being what it is, and being one of the higher socioeconomic areas of the city, you get a lot of either recent immigrants with money that want to rent before they buy, and or people that are looking to rent in the area. That have means that are looking for a space such as a townhome provides. So in terms of demand, it's certainly there for those types of properties as well.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Robert, any questions of the applicant?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
I have none, thanks.
And I have none either. Requirement for summary, Matthew?
I mean, I can only speak on the way I stabilized 2390 McPhillips. I did 3 years, and if I presented the workup in terms of rebuttal and other hearings with other applicants, because they have that, I did the evaluation. I calculated 4.79, but I didn't provide the workup, so I can't really comment on that. I think Sage Creek is a more attractive area than North McPhillips. Hence, going from 4 3/4 to 4.5. I didn't see any reason to make a change to the cap. That's my summation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Well, just again, on a similar note, according to accepted appraisal theory, you can't rely on one source of data and making your valuation decisions, whether that be a single rent or a single capitalization rate. So 2390 McPhillips, yes, we arrive at different cap rates, but it's one data point, which the city's model has used to come up with 4.5 and 4.55. We've provided 3 recent ones, and obviously the range is 5 to 5.3 in our materials. That's my summation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. That concludes 165 Sage Creek Boulevard. We have heard all the items scheduled today on the docket, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you to all parties for appearing.